Well, good morning, everybody. Can I add my thanks to you for coming? I know that there are members of the profession who are already on board EasyJet planes heading towards the south of Spain as we speak. So thank you all very much for being here. I want to raise some questions this morning about initial teacher training, and I want to do it by thinking and reflecting on my journey through understanding behaviour and classroom management. And I want to use that to generate some ideas and questions for you to think about. I think probably my first and most vivid memory of being stuck in the classroom was in my first year in my new school after my PGCE. Like many frightened young teachers at the time, I used to lock the door because I thought that if I kept them in, things would be better. At least I wouldn't get into trouble outside the room, and I could probably manage it if it was contained inside the room. It wasn't really such a smart strategy. On the day in question, a kid threw a shilling into the corner of the room and screamed out "penny scramble," and 20 members of the form dived over desks to go into the far corner. And I was standing there wondering what to do about that when a little child, who I shan't name because we're on television, came up and said, "I want to have a pee, Mr. Bayley." I said, "Well, you can't." And he said, "Well, I have to." I said, "Well, you can't." He said, "Well, if you don't let me go, I just will." I said, "Well, it's your choice." I'd learned something about choice. He said, "Well, I'll jump out the window." I said, "Do what you like, Sonny." Another really wonderful piece of behaviour management. We were on the first floor. To my absolute horror, he went and hung out of the window by his fingertips, which attracted some attention from within the room. And I was just about old enough to have my wits about me. I thought, I need to think about this. And I was standing thinking about it when a voice said quietly in my ear, "Do we need a little help, Mr. Bayley?" And it was the second in command in my department who'd let himself in with a master key. And of course he managed to get the situation sorted out. That seems to me like a long time ago. But as a matter of fact, several points from that story are still enormously important. The man who came and whispered in my ear, Mr. Weirden, the deputy head of the department, was my first taste of being in a department that in fact insisted on open doors, insisted on a high level of mutual observation. And I soon learned that we kept all our doors open in that department, and they were in and out of each other's rooms a lot. And I got a memory of that, or a vestigial aftertaste of that, in some work I've been doing in the school lately, where they've started an open door policy. And it means that teachers stick stickers on the outside of their classroom saying, "This is an open classroom, please come in and watch what I'm teaching today. We'd be glad to have guests." And the head teacher every morning points out people who might be teaching some interesting stuff today. There's an excellent experiment going on in Mr. Groggin's room at 10 o'clock. Denise is trying a fantastic starter at 20 to 12. Please drop in. And that culture is beginning to bite. So one of the things about that early story is it reminds me of the importance of open door policies. And it also reminds me of the importance of mentoring and tutoring relationships, which is really where I want this conversation to end. In fact, let me tell you where I want it to end, just in case I forget on the way, and then I've got the point established. When we're teaching people various competences, either to do with teaching and learning or behaviour management, or, more properly, a synthesis of both, we often get involved in questions of inspection and assessment. I was talking to a young teacher on the Teach First programme at the end of last summer, who said she'd be pleased to have me observe her because she'd been observed 27 times that year, and a 28th wouldn't make any difference. In fact, she was fantastic, as you might imagine. She's probably one of the most observed teachers in the country. But when we're going to be observed, we put on a protective series of behaviours. And we certainly don't experiment when we're being observed. Another thing that I've been doing recently is experimenting with a procedure as follows. If you're my mentor or my buddy, you come into the room and you observe me teaching, and you give me some feedback on it afterwards. We discuss how I might change my practice in the future. But then, and this is the key to this particular procedure, you then sit down and help me plan my next lesson. I've developed a lightning lesson planning form that divides lessons up into 5 or 6 episodes, talks about what's going to be the sticky and exciting bit of the lesson, defines the differentiation and puts in 2 or 3 teacher targets. You and I can fill this in 10 minutes on a hard-pressed day. And it means then that the person who comes back into my classroom is a partner in crime. It's someone who wants to work with me on developing the project that we have in front of us. So that's taking a rather tenuous link from what happened to me in that classroom all those years ago. So let's go back to the beginning of the journey, and I'll start unfolding my questions for you. 10 or 15 years ago, what was going on in this country, I think in terms of behaviour management, some of you will be old enough to remember Weddell and Merritt, and the Backpack and the Batsack, which were early behaviourist, competency-based approaches to training. Then we moved on, and between about 15 and 20 years ago, I think probably training in this country was dominated by 3 or 4 schools of thought. Bill Rogers, as he still is, was pulling them in with his behaviour recovery programs. I think Bill, I have him down as a cognitivist. He does a lot of thinking about how children and adults process information in the classroom. There are another bunch of people going off on courses, assertive discipline courses. Lee Cantor, very heavily dominated by behaviourist thinking. But I must say, I've been an AD trainer in my time, and you won't hear me say a word against it, because establishing the balance of incentives in a classroom is still an extremely important idea. And I think there was a third body of people who would be getting their training from people like Jenny Mosley, Circle Time, and they were learning a lot about the power of groups, about establishing a climate for learning, and about establishing affiliation between teachers and adults. But the coverage was enormously, I suppose one would have to say at the time, spotty. Some people had gone on those courses and understood those things, and some people might have seen a bit of those training tapes on their initial teacher training. Then, following the election in '97, and the focus on inclusion, there's been a huge explosion of training materials, leading to the BIP and the SEAL. Philip was saying they've uploaded, so I'm still nervous, uploaded 1,000 items onto the Behaviour for Learning website. There must be tens of thousands of items if you take the whole gamut of the SEAL and Behaviour for Learning and so on. It's an absolutely bewildering amount of material. I don't know when the last time was any of you cruised around those sites looking for material. It's like being in a bazaar at Christmas time. And I want to say something about that in a moment.